Hello, welcome to a little update. Let's call it a prequel on the reading that you're about to hear. Um, I wanted to make a correction because obviously my brain was malfunctioning, and in the reading that you're about to hear, it's the theme is during cancer season. What do you need to protect during cancer season? And I was referring to the summer solstice, but instead I was calling it the solar eclipse. So, I mean, we did have a solar eclipse, I think that what the sun does on its path, well, rather on our path around the sun, and what the sun is, how it's positioned in relation to us, and how what it's doing. I mean, it's not doing anything. In some ways, we're doing something, and it's just there. And that's sort of the nature of the sun, is the constancy of it. But um, it's always relevant. So anyone who wants to connect that to the summer solstice, that's cool. I know that a lot of readers and mystics, etc., talk about how the eclipses have certain effects and after effects, effects before and after. So, but it was a mistake, and so you're going to hear me talk about the summer solstice a number of times, the solar eclipse a number of times when I mean the summer solstice, um, and you're going to hear me talking about the summer solstice happening on June 20th, um, and and also another interesting occurrence around that um, time is that the strawberry moon, the full moon, was in Capricorn, which actually is like normal for that year, for that time of year, because it's always in the opposite sign of the, well, not always, but the moon is often in the opposite sign to the sun sign. Um, but um, On this occasion, there were two Capricorn moons this year, one in January, and usually the full moon in January is a Cancer moon. So that was an interesting occurrence. And the other thing was that the solstice was on June 20th, which happens sometimes. It's often on June 21st in the sign of Cancer. The latest it can be is on June 22nd. It's very rarely on June 22nd. Um, and this year it was on June 20th, but it was the earliest solstice that it's been since 1796, I believe this date is the date. So I said I would provide those details um, in the reading, which I already recorded, and then I listened to it and I realized uh, I had been saying the solar eclipse instead of this summer solstice. So I decided to make a little prequel and to include those details and to say a few more things. It's going to be interesting, I guess, because you'll be hearing from the future before the past, I suppose, in my timeline, but that's not your timeline, so that's interesting to think about. Um, I I wanted to say that there is there was a concept that I referred to, that I will be referring to in your reading that you are about to hear. If you continue listening, that is, and that is, I was thinking about the um, division and duality, and how the division of Gemini, the sign of Gemini, the duality of that kind of folds into the interiority of Cancer season. Um, so dividing upon the space in which we exist internally, brings us into a sort of internal depth and almost creates spaciousness, and our own sort of echoing, spacious, uh, native uh, space or place where we can be, which is the calming womb-like sort of Cancerian space, inner space. Um, and when I thought about it later on, I thought about this division and I realized, um, with the golden section, you can actually, which is this ratio that exists in nature that's found in a lot of like spirals, um, you can fold inwards. You can actually like fold a piece of paper inwards according to that ratio, um, and it's often found in seashells. So when we're dividing something, it's not necessarily a process of separation, it could be a process of unification. So that's basically the point that I make later on in the video, but I thought about it a little bit more deeply, and since I was going to post this update anyway, I thought I would share that with you. Um, anyway, I feel like there's a lot more to say. I don't know if I yeah, I think that's really important. I guess I should say the name of my channel because I didn't start in the usual official way. This is Tarot Incognito. I do a little bit of an explainer in the clip you'll hear later about the name. I'm not going to do that every time, but since I've just started posting, I figure why not. Um, uh, Terra Incognito, Incognito, Incognita is unknown country. That's in a Bob Dylan lyric, and the wild unknown country, um, where you cannot go wrong, is actually the full lyric there, um, in song Isis, where you find the lyric. And so maybe somebody needs to hear that there's a there's a there's a an unknown space where you cannot actually go wrong. I mean, the song itself is a little bit, I guess, more ambivalent, but I feel like that the idea of questing into that space is something that's interesting to me, and yeah, I wanted to break that down um, a bit further, break it down or bring it together, um, and was there anything else I wanted? I feel like there's all these little bits coming together, you know. I never knew the way to put it, and I want to thank all my fellow tarot readers who have given me the words to say. They will say that they're intuitive readers, and what that means is they draw from a lot of different sources, and they will not just read the cards by the formal meaning. And I think I'm glad for them to say this because this is what I do, and it's also what I've done for a very, very long time. And I've drawn from various aspects of my life, and once things come together, it's actually mind blowing. It's actually mind blowing. Um, it's like I remember doing a reading for a friend, and I can't remember the exact cards in the reading, but it's like we walked out the door into the reading. Like first we saw one thing that was in the card, and then we saw another thing that was in the cards, and it wasn't like, we weren't, really putting our own bias on it. It was just like this perfect sort of, once you start to describe things, you also start to experience things. Once you start to describe things intuitively, you also start to experience things. So anyway, I make that I say talk about that later on. This is like a whole bunch of like spiritual, maybe useful, whatever. So I may put a timestamp, and if you feel like you want to skip this and go to the reading, that's fine. But maybe there's a little bit of information here also for the reading too, because in the reading, I it's a collective reading and it's fairly general, but there may be some little specifics in there for people. I recorded it on the new moon in Cancer. We're probably in Leo at this point. I've been pretty, like, obviously, I've got a new channel here and it's been late in uploading. I've been late in uploading readings and so on. But whenever it reaches you is the right time, it's timeless. All these readings are timeless. Um, and um, yeah, so just information I'm getting a lot of like Cancer season sort of information around me. I was standing in a queue in a supermarket, and this woman in front of me was wearing overalls head to toe, and she was um, covered in this like purple paint. And I thought she looked like she was an artist or something, like she'd been in the studio. So I said, "What are you painting?" And she said, "Oh, I'm painting the whole house." I was like, "Wow, you're doing a total overhaul. You're redecorating the whole place." And she said, "No, I'm painting the whole house. I'm painting the outside of the house." And I was like, "Wow, that's a big thing to take on." But it made me think about just the symbolism of the house and the dwelling place, and just that little kind of nugget of like, no, I'm painting the whole house. I'm painting the outside of the house. Um, I'm painting it into, the in the color that I want it to be. The exterior of the house, the whole exterior structure of the house. It's kind of unusual somehow. And she looked at me and she said, "Wow, you don't know, girl. You don't know. It's been something." So it was obviously she knew she had taken on a big undertaking. So that could be significant. I think that's definitely a very Cancer sort of a Cancer reminiscent thing. We sort of like have to like um, unpack our own build and then unpack our own dwellings. Um, there's also another thing I wanted to say is about chevalier. Chevalier comes from the French cavalier. Sorry, comes from the French word chevalier, which is horseman, and a horseman is a knight, and a knight it brings messages, information, and speed in the tarot traditionally, and that's something you're going to hear about later. I think there needs to be like confidence at this time, with Cancer being a cardinal sign. I think there needs to be confidence. There needs to be wind in your hair. There needs to be breaking into a gallop, and there needs to be a feeling in your body of enjoyment of this time of year. I feel that there's something coming to you. Somebody's coming to you with something that feels like an unboxed, shiny, new thing that's exciting, but that you don't actually have to necessarily accept. It's almost like somebody who's heard everything about some latest technology, and they're excited about it, but they haven't actually like tried it out. So it's for you to try out. It's for you to figure out. It's going to be brought into a world that is a more internal. It's going to be. It's going to be like a sort of a shiny kind of a flashy sort of uh, appearance on the um, the background of something that's like that you're doing that's actually a lot slower, more industrious, more uh, focused, mindful, down to earth, and um, I think it's going to be helpful, but it's going to have a limited shelf life, and it's for you to decide in what way you use it. Um, and your undertaking is something older, deeper, more enduring, and more um, personal and meaningful to you. So you can just take this and you can work it in, and you can actually eject what doesn't work in a very natural sort of a process, perhaps without even engaging it. It's like this is a delivery mechanism. It's just person or whoever this influence is. It doesn't have to be. They're bringing the news, but that's different from meaningfully connecting. Um, Now that's and the other thing I wanted to say is there's an influence hovering over you that is good, and it's light, and it's sort of faint in the way that somebody who wishes you well may currently be distant, but it may be nearer at some point in the future. You know, it will be nearer. It's a part of you. It always will be. Um, it's something you can draw from. So it's sort of like if you think that um, if you think that it's sort of weak to maybe rely on maybe the memory of somebody or someone's love for you or someone who isn't involved with your life at the moment but you still care for, don't worry. Do depend on that. You know, it doesn't have to be a person. It could be a hope as well, something that's a bright spot that kind of um, moves over your existence and moves out of the frame but always kind of comes back. Okay, and that's enough for me for my so-called brief intro. I guess this is maybe another reading in itself. I might just flag that when I post the video. And I wish you the best. You can always like the video and subscribe. That would be great. And have fun in the readings. The reading. Hello, and welcome to a quick reading to commence Cancer season. We're going to do a quick reading, a collective reading with the theme, what do you need to protect during Cancer season? This is Tarot Incognito. I've explained the handle in another video, but just a quick summary for you. Not that it needs to be explained anymore, any every time, but you know, hashtag branding, etc., or maybe just some information that's going to be helpful in thinking about what we're doing here today. So yeah, basically it's a pun on the phrase unknown country, terra incognita. Bob Dylan has a song Isis about with the line wild unknown country. There's also a tarot deck called the Wild Unknown as well. So the idea is that we live in the world and there's a lot of descriptors of this world, and there's a lot of like scientific and more logical descriptors of this world, but most of these, as much as you know, that science can describe our world and very accurately predict our world, there's still descriptors. There's a topography of our world, which we can navigate with a lot of tools, and tarot is one of the tools that's really helpful for insight. So we're navigating this unknown country, and we could do it with any tools that we want. And in fact, tarot is only one divination tool. I'm an intuitive reader, so I use a lot of different, any kind of random divination tool that I run across, you know. And there are many forms of knowing and knowledge, and all of them are relevant, and everybody here is welcome, no matter who you are. If you're into science, if you're into tarot and mysticism, if you're whatever religion you are, if you're an atheist and you just want to symbolically, you know, figure out what's going on in your psyche, everybody's welcome. So yeah, that being said, I just wanted to do a quick reading here, and it's a little bit it's not it's not as calm as I'd want it to be, but it's I had a little bit of trouble making this happen, but it's um I think it was meant to happen. I really wanted to do this reading. So um you know intention is everything, and here we are. So one thing I wanted to say actually is that we've just entered into Cancer season on the back of a solar eclipse, which was the first solar eclipse on the 20th of June in, I think it's like 1770. I can't remember the exact date. A very long time. Um, and and then so normally the solar eclipse is in Gemini, and we or in Cancer, sorry, but this year it was in Gemini. So you close out the first months of the year with the sign of Gemini, which is all about duality, and then you enter the sign of Cancer, which is it's a different sign, so much different from Gemini. This year, the eclipse was in Gemini, which is interesting. Um, Also, we had a strawberry moon, I believe it was, which is the full moon in Capricorn, um, and I think that was also a record. I think it's been the first time the strawberry moon has been in Capricorn since a very long time. I can find out when exactly those what those records were, and like put them in the comments perhaps, or in the description. But anyway, kind of two records set in the middle of the year for like where we're beginning with this second half of the year in 2024. So yeah. Um, Anyway, just I think it's important to kind of be aware of these shifts. So I just wanted to share that, and I think there's something in that, and maybe I'll keep talking about that, as I go through this reading or like other readings. There's something I wanted to say about that. What was it? Um, hmm. Something about that. Well, we're almost directly opposite the full moon, the strawberry moon in Capricorn now. We're in the new moon in Cancer. So, and we're in I don't know if we're actually in the new moon yet, but we're coming up to it. And the new moon has an energy of like, it has an energy, there's a lot of energy to the new moon, and it's traditionally known as a time for like starting things and getting things done, and anything from domestic projects to whatever other projects you got going on. So, without with that being said, let us move into the reading and let's see what we got. I pulled some cards here, and I pulled cards from the Bluebird Lenormand. I'm sorry, my French pronunciation is no good anymore since high school, but Madame Lenormand was a tarot reader, I think she was fairly important in the history of tarot, but she wasn't strictly reading tarot. As far as I know, she was reading her own system of divination, and it involved playing cards. And the way that this works is you have to lay out all of the cards, so that's like a big spread, and then you have to figure out which cards are like closest to the people cards that represent the querent, which is the person asking the question. Now, I haven't done that. I've pulled out a couple of like just random cards because I like the images and I think they're lovely, and they're very they're just very kind of homely but poetic and evocative. So and I mean it's very Bridgerton, I haven't been watching it by myself, but maybe some of you have, so we'll go with that theme. And so what we have with these cards is we have two cards, which interestingly enough I pulled out four cards, two cards that represent I believe represent the querent, and they're the lady cards. And there are only two, they're both number 29, and there are only two of these cards. They're two number 29 cards, which is strange, which is weird. But they represent two halves of two sides of, I guess, like womanhood. One of them is an older woman and one is a younger woman. They have the same rhyme on the face of the card, and it reads: "This charming woman, with flowers in hand, as with the gentleman, her cards will command. The fortunes revealed once the cards have been placed, unveil the fate that destiny traced." Um, and with these cards, we have the other two cards I've drawn are the Cavalier, which says, "Heed well, good news from the Cavalier, impassioned views promise good cheer. Sadness that hides, veiled in the day, once disguised, soon flies away." And then we have the Sun. Sun is warm and brightens the day. Good luck has begun to come your way. The closer your location, you bask in sweet bliss. Energy abounds in summer's radiant kiss. And I've drawn some tarot cards as well. So we're going to start with these cards. Or maybe I'll just also explain the tarot cards. Yeah, I'll do that actually. So the tarot cards we have here are, we've got the King of Cups, we've got the Tower, we've got the Nine of Pentacles, we've got the Fool, and we have got the Chariot, and one more I drew. I just felt the need to draw one more here, and that is the Page of Pentacles. So, and there's so much going on here. I'm trying to keep this to a short reading, but it's really hard. So, yeah, bear with me. I'll do my best. There's been so much, there's been a shift as well. I think Saturn is back in retrograde. And I just have to tell you something. If you're hearing some noises in the background, it's because they're working on the water on the road, on the street where I am, outside window. And that's something interesting. Saturn is currently in Pisces, so we're going backwards with Saturn retrograde. If anybody else experienced the Saturn retrograde the way I did, it was not comfortable. In the sign of Pisces, it's almost kind of maddening, like the kinds of expectations that are put on you. It's like Kafkaesque, people expecting you to, it's like, I think there's a meme that goes around that's like, it's like, oh, when you die and you're working or something, it's like your work is notified, and it's like, are you sure you can't come in? You know what I mean? It's like the kind of like nonsensical demands of this Saturnine kind of like structure at times, even when like, there's total dissolution, these demands are still imposed, and often to just great suffering, actually. People are required sometimes in moments of the worst grief of their life to like call the bank, or to do something, or to anything that is absolutely absurd, from the point of view of like actual human experience and spiritual experience. But that is what Saturn is. And then Saturn in Pisces, it's a strange combination, and much more can be said about it. But there's been a lot going on with just a lot of Cancer energy rolling in, really beautiful Cancer energy, but like there's a feeling of, I think, being quite paused, but not paused like, I believe it's not paused as in stuck so much, maybe because I think that Saturn is going direct again. I'm not sure when it's going direct, but I don't think the retrograde is going to be as long this time. I remember what it was is I think all of the planets were in retrograde for a while, so that was like a doozy. But there's a feeling right now of like we're quite paused. We're paused in Cancer, and when there's something moving, like spinning, and you pause, if there's any kind of a spinning object, like a spinning top, and you put your finger on it, it doesn't immediately stop, you know. It can just kind of like change the motion. So it sort of feels like the pause is depending on obviously like how hard you know what how hard you break that. But what it feels like is that the motion is being paused, and though so it's being changed in a way. Um, that's the feeling I'm getting, right? So anyway, with the cards here, what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling, there's so much here, and I wish I could do more, but I just can't right now. Is basically sorry, I keep saying basically. Basic bitches here. um, uh, and I just paused the video there. I needed to pause it, and I hope you're not getting too much interference from the noise. But yeah, I needed to pause the video. Pausing's okay, you know. Um, so with these two women, I think it's very interesting that we've got the two sides of womanhood, young and old. You know how the moon is described as in witchcraft particularly, but I think in other systems and traditions as well, the phases of the moon are sort of likened to like the phases of womanhood. So you have, you know, kind of like the the maiden and the mother and the hag, right? And we don't need to like stick to these sorts of descriptions of women so much, but I think like um how do I put it? There are um two halves of our duties sometimes, and I think it can be like a waning half, and there are two halves of like the way that we care for ourselves and for other people and our fullness, and it can be like a waning half where we're sort of like um, letting go, and we're maybe throwing things out, and maybe we're just contracting, and then there's like a more blossoming half, and this happens like cyclically throughout the month, and it happens throughout our lives, everyone, men and women, you know. And then we have the good news here, the Cavalier. This kind of makes me think of the Magician a little bit, like somebody getting something started, or somebody, maybe, who knows. Um, what did Bruce Springsteen say about you can't start a fire without a spark? Um, and here is the Cavalier, and Cavalier is often used as like you know, kind of a negative, like somebody's cavalier, meaning they're careless. But sometimes you gotta do something, you know. I think Cancer understands that as a sign. I think Cancer is a sign that really understands care in that regard. Um, that care and carelessness, you have to be cautious and conscientious, but also care means getting your hands dirty, um, and someone's got to do it. And there's a baby that needs to be held, and there's a project that needs to be nurtured, and there's a sick person that needs to be comforted, and you just do it, you know. So the good news here is also interesting as well. It feels like we have the sun as well, and now the sun, in according to my reading about this card in this deck, it can be a good sign depending on how far it is from the querent, from the card that represents the person asking the question. Now we haven't pulled like a full traditional spread of these cards, so we don't know where it is. But I like the idea that like it's a card that hovers, and it could be at some distance. Um, so we'll say that it's hovering. You know, there's something that needs to happen, and that um, it's at a bit of a distance, but it's coming. You know. Um, and we also have like just the summer, you know, represented here. You know, we are in summer. This is like beach, not where I am currently, but beach weather for a lot of people, you know. And we sort of frolic in this season of Cancer. I feel like we just kind of like let ourselves be quite careless, carefree, as I said, carefree. Um, and what we have here also is we have the King of Cups, as I said, and we have the Knight of Pentacles, and we have the, and I think those two are interesting together because they're different. The King of Cups is very emotional, and the Nine of Pentacles is kind of like practical and kind of worldly. And then we have the Tower. These were together. I'm kind of like struggling because these came out in a certain way, but now I didn't put them back the same way. And then we have the Fool. So it's like something's being shaken up, and it seems like maybe there's a what was I thinking about this? I'm trying to go back to my reflections and recollections on this. It's like there's a need to go, and with the Chariot here, and maybe we're being kind of like, unfortunately, like the spinning top, we're just being like, interrupted. There's a need to go, and maybe one side of us is saying, yeah, we're ready, we've got it all, we've got all our ducks in a row. And another side of us, the King of Cups, is just like, well, but we're okay right now. Why do we have to go? And then we've got the Page of Pentacles here, and the Page of Pentacles speaks of like learning, studying, and taking it patiently, slowly, and looking at the details. So I feel like there's kind of like this kind of conflict between being quite patient and taking on whatever the world wants you to take on, and also saying like, well, but I've reached a point where I'm okay, and I'm kind of like, feeling just more kind of serene in my own emotional state, But I think that the Nine of Pentacles is looking at and saying, well, it's not all here yet, and it's not all coming at us full frontally. It's coming at us in an unwinding fashion that is a direct result of our own actions, and will be appropriate for us, and we will be able to deal with. And it's unwinding us and our maybe plans and intentions as we predicted them, but it's unwinding us at a point where we were paused, where we actually had been like listening, we had been learning, we had been focusing, and we had been attentive. And when we were attentive, when things happen to us, it's still okay, so that's the bulk of the message. I mean, it's kind of a collective reading, so there could be more specifics in there for people. One interesting thing I want to say here is that these two women, the book also says that it can represent same-sex relationships, and I really love that, because I think this is maybe a slant for some people, some individuals, or people in general, but maybe somebody individually. The world of women doesn't always have to face outwards. It doesn't always have to face towards the opposite, towards the yin yang, whatever. It can face inwards, whether it's you're attracted to women, and that's what you're into, or whether it's like just like women in their own world, you know, and doing their own thing, have had a culture for years, for hundreds and thousands of years. um, and it doesn't have to be women. If you're not a woman watching this, it could be just the sense that like sometimes you don't have to face outwards to your opposite. You can kind of kind of face inwards upon your own territory, which is kind of Cancerian, and um, you can sort of like build like it makes me think of like the world under the floorboards of like of the mice, or like that children's book The Borrowers. You can kind of build like a world within a world. It doesn't have to face outward to the bigger world all the time, you know. And then we have this card which says, yes, there is an outward going force. I mean, he looks like a bit of a cad, to be fair. Maybe he's like trying to intrude on these kind of this world of women here, you know. And but I don't think he's kind of a bad influence. I think he's just like bringing some sort of a message, and which does not have to disrupt the internal world, and doesn't have to you know, shake us outward into something that we're not, you know. And this speaks to me of some kind of agent of technology, or a like a somebody who's selling something, or um somebody like a job, or like somebody who comes into a job and is maybe, you know, from another organization doing something within that organization. Also just there's something else here, and I'm struggling to say to grasp it, but like it, it makes me think of a preacher. It makes me think of a um it makes me think of someone coming to town for a conference. Someone, I don't know how to put it, but I feel like it's almost like a bringer of new skills or something like that. Um, I don't know, and I think this can be meant on a very literal level to some people, and on a more metaphorical level to others. But I think there's quiet activity here going on, and these women know something. They know something. They both know something. The older woman, the younger woman, and they're working together, not against each other or against the outer world, which is interesting, because everything always divides and divides and divides. Even when we go into the inner world, we're dividing, and we can divide again, but we're not dividing. I don't know. It's interesting, I think, especially when we think about the fact that the solstice happened in Gemini. So maybe we're kind of like thinking about, maybe we're like working through dualities, and how dualities can like um split us apart, but they can also like maybe also unfold us inward in some way. This warm sun as well, I feel, is like really interesting. Just the deep yellow of it, like the holiday colors, like just you can imagine walking on the beach there. I think that yeah, there's just been so much Cancer stuff happening. I don't even know what to say. I watched this beautiful movie, A Red Desert by Antonioni. It's an absolute masterpiece. It's very sad, very traditional gender stereotypes, but very beautiful and very Cancer coded. And I think the woman in that movie, as tragic as she is, I won't give away spoilers. I think there was a sense that she had an internal world, that she like, if there was a way, she could have maybe like folded into that world and kind of like become herself. So maybe that's a message, that's for somebody. There's a lot here, and I ran on longer than I want, but this is just this one for the season. It feels like what you need to protect here is some kind of some kind of work you're doing, but also an ability to be internally dual, but also internally united. So that's what I'm seeing here. I'm sure there's more. I wish I could do more, but unfortunately I can't right now. I hope that resonates with anybody who watched it, and I wish wish you all the best in everything.